Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, former curator of well, it's not the Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial anymore. I guess it's USS Old New Jersey now. Uh, and we just got the word to clean out our office. The Navy is taking the battleship back for action in the Black Sea. Under our contract, the nonprofit Homeport Alliance owned Battleship New Jersey, but the US Navy could step back in and take the ship over with as little as 90 days notice in a national emergency. And with conflict escalating worldwide and the size of the Navy only shrinking, with the decommissioning of a number of Ticonderoga-class cruisers and as many as 9 littoral combat ships upcoming, the Navy decided to bring back a ship with some actual firepower and, more importantly, staying power. So Battleship New Jersey is joining the active fleet once again. April Fools, everyone. The Navy is not taking the ship over. I'm not fired. The museum is still going to be here for you to visit. But in today's April Fool's Day video, let's talk about what it would look like if the Navy chose to take the ship back and explore that possibility. In the meantime, I'm going to return my curatorial Ouija board to my office, and then we'll pick back up somewhere else on the ship. People always ask me how I know so much about history. It's got nothing to do with the primary documents here. You got to talk to the people who were there. Later tonight, I'm calling Admiral Halsey. So, what would it look like if the Navy came to take the ship back? Believe it or not, something similar to this has happened before. Battleship New Jersey, of course, has been recalled to active service 3 times. And during each of those periods, she received a certain amount of yard work, a certain amount of new equipment, and a relatively consistent amount of money going into the ship, adjusted for inflation. So from that, we can extrapolate what a major yard period would look like to reactivate the ship. But that's not what I mean when I say this has sort of happened before. The old pre-dreadnought battleship USS Oregon was turned into a museum ship, and then during World War II, the state of Oregon gave it back to the Navy. Or maybe the Navy asked for it back. It's kind of unclear. But the ship goes back to the Navy. She doesn't go back to the Navy for frontline service, though. She's a 1890s era pre-dreadnought battleship, veteran of the Spanish-American War. So by the 1940s, she is as ancient and obsolete as the Constitution was. USS Constitution. The actual Constitution is not obsolete. So, the Navy takes the ship back, and because of wartime material shortages, they cut her up for scrap, basically. And so they take a preserved historic vessel, and rather than using her, they cut her up for scrap. So honestly, the next time the Navy takes the ship back, that is the most likely thing that will happen. She won't return to active duty. She'll be cut up for scrap. All this pre-nuclear, high-grade armor plate. But like I said earlier, our contract does allow for the Navy to give us a letter with 90 days notice. I think it specifically says the Secretary of the Navy will send it's either the board president or the executive director of the Homeport Alliance a notice giving 90 days that the ship's going to take, or that the Navy's going to take the ship over. So assuming there's a national emergency, the Navy chooses to do that, we've got 90 days basically to pack up and leave, which is plenty of time. Maybe not enough time to find a new job, but plenty of time to take all our stuff and get off of here. And then the Navy comes and gets the ship back. Does the ship belong to the Navy? No. Does the ship receive federal funding? No. Do we have any sort of Navy or government presence on board this ship? No. So, would staff like myself get any sort of severance or compensation or anything like that from the federal government when this is happening? No. Maybe the nonprofit would give us some sort of severance package. But honestly, it's never happened. There's no paperwork that explains what that looks like. So the ship is now back in Navy hands. Maybe they tow us back over to the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the former Navy Yard, but there are still dry docks there that can handle the ship. And maybe that's where the work is done, or depending on what kind of emergency it is, maybe they take us down to Norfolk, which is probably the next closest dry dock that is still under Navy control that could handle the ship. But if it is an emergency, Norfolk would probably already be building stuff. So they might contract one of the civilian contractors here at the Philly Navy Yard, put her back into Dry Dock 3 where she was first built and reactivated for Vietnam. And then it would likely be somewhere around $2 billion modern day adjusted for inflation. And somewhere between 9 and 12 months, probably a full year of work to bring the ship up to modern standards. Things like the main battery guns and the engineering equipment are maintained covered in preservative grease, and we're not allowed to touch those. They remained encased as part of the decommissioning and museum process. So the Navy would have to go through, clean all that up, and then reactivate it. They'd have to train people how to use an old 600-pound steam plant. I don't believe there's a single ship in the Navy that uses 600-pound steam anymore. They would definitely have to train people how to use the guns. There are still some parts for these guns in the national inventory. If they can dig them up. Most of them have been gotten rid of, and there's probably not the complete set of what you need to maintain these ships, but this country has the capability of remaking parts and doing that sort of stuff, so that's not a concern. Powder and shells for the main guns would probably have to be remanufactured. The Navy, and even more recently than that, the Army, have gotten rid of all of their stocks, and I believe by now it is all gone. Or at least fully demilitarized, so you'd have to go through and collect it and somehow get it working again. The shells, get them filled with the composition D. So there would not be any small amount of work that goes into this. It's not as simple as during the Vietnam War when all this stuff was still in the inventory and there were other ships to draw parts from. The other World War II era ships had relatively interchangeable parts. Even in the 1980s, the Navy went to the existing museum battleships at that time, primarily North Carolina, Massachusetts, and Alabama, to strip the parts off that they needed to reactivate the Iowas. They never gave those parts back that were kept in the spare inventory, so the ones on the Iowas are probably the only ones left, with the exception of the whatever spare parts might be left on USS Charleston in the Philadelphia Navy Yard. So spare parts would be a huge problem. Bringing these ships up to modern standards would be a huge problem. The longest New Jersey ever went without being reactivated was, about 8 years, 50s to 60s, 60s to 80s. It was about 13 years. The longest an Iowa went from decommissioning to active reactivation would have been Missouri. That's 1955 to 1986. So that's, 31 years, which is exactly the length of time from when an Iowa-class battleship was last active right now. So we are at the extreme upper end of when one of these ships has been reactivated, what the precedent is for bringing a battleship back from mothballs. We've done a ton of other videos where we've talked about why the Navy won't bring the ships back or what would need to go into it, so feel free to check those out in the description below. So you can drop your questions in the comment section down below, or many of you have been trying to get a hold of me, asking questions, sending requests to my private LinkedIn page or my private Facebook page or whatnot. So we have set up a Ryan Szymanski Facebook page where if you're looking to interact with me, you have questions, comments, things you want to talk about, you can head over there. And there's a link to that down in the description below. I'm looking forward to talking with you guys. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. Your support, the donations you give the museum, allow the museum to function so that the Navy doesn't come back and take the ship and turn her into razor blades, which is also something it says they can do in our contract. So we really appreciate that. It's been a rough 2 years, so any support you can give us is greatly appreciated. There's a link in the description below for ways you can donate, and you can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our channel. Thanks for watching. See you over on the Facebook. Libby! Libby! It's black!